I truly believe that you cannot understand Mary the First of England without understanding what she went through when she was a princess. So in this Once Upon a Woman video, I'm discussing with you how she was treated as a princess, as the daughter of Henry VIII. I'm going to take you through, obviously, the nice parts when she's young of her childhood and how everything became almost a nightmare. I know that Mary I is a type of a controversial figure. She's known as Bloody Mary, and I will also reassess her reign because I think that we need to stop calling her Bloody Mary. We need to stop looking at her as a bad queen regnant of England, and I will explain you why. But also, to understand what she did or didn't do during her reign, you need to understand her younger years. You need to understand her childhood. You need to understand her teenage years. Mary I was born on the 18th February 1516 and died on the 17th November 1558. She is the daughter of Henry VIII of England and of Catherine of Aragon. She is the eldest daughter of Henry VIII. When she was born at the Palace of Greenwich in England, she was the only child of King Henry VIII, and there was still hope for the couple to have one day a son. But her birth was also ultimately kind of a big disappointment for Henry VIII, who really wanted to have a son. Catherine of Aragon had suffered many pregnancies, many miscarriages, and many stillborns. So the fact that she had a daughter, she was doting on her daughter, and she was so happy and delighted to have Mary. The bond between Mary and Catherine of Aragon is marvelous. It is so strong. And I'm saying that in terms of royal families, where usually there's not always such a strong bond between mothers and their children. And you can see that, for example, with Mary de Medici, who has a very complex relationship with her children later on in the 17th century. But here, Catherine and Mary are almost a unit. Mary is probably a very good kind of mix when you think about it between Henry VIII and Catherine. She had their strengths but also their weaknesses, and she was, raised as Princess of England. She was loved as well by her father, she was the only child, and so she received lots of love. She was betrothed at 2 years old to the Dauphin of France. It never happened, obviously, but what I'm saying here is that she was the pride and joy of her parents for a long time, and so she was treated as such. She received an excellent education in dancing, playing instruments, but also in classic text and in languages. She was extremely skilled and talented, and she made her parents very, very proud. The only problem was, truly, she was only a girl. The first threat to Mary's status, and maybe even Mary's position in the heart of her father, Henry VIII, because honestly she never had to fight for her mother's love, was without a doubt the birth of his illegitimate son, Henry Fitzroy, on the 15th June 1519. Henry VIII had a mistress, Elizabeth Blount, and they had a child together, this son. He's the half-brother of Mary I. And here he's everything that Henry wanted. He's a son, and he became Duke of Richmond and Somerset. He's giving lands, he's giving titles. His mother is giving lands and titles. But somehow the relationship between Elizabeth Blount and Henry VIII just stopped. Henry VIII was not in love with Elizabeth Blount, and he was probably not thinking of doing anything about it. It's still 1519. He still thought that he could have, more children with Catherine of Aragon. Another thing, though, he really thought that because he had a son, that the problem was not him. For Mary, that was kind of a threat in the sense that she was no longer the only child of Henry VIII. She was still the only child of Catherine of Aragon. And so maybe there was a feeling of having to defend her status, or maybe having a feeling to get her father's attention more. Having said that, I have to say that still she was Princess of England, she was not badly treated, and Henry VIII was still very close to his legitimate daughter that he still thought about, like, what kind of alliance I can make, because a daughter gives you the opportunity to have a strong alliance with another European parties, for example. So I think that here, you know, it was still like, it kind of rocked the boat, but not as bad as was going to happen later on in 1527. The truth is, the biggest threat to Mary is the same biggest threat to Catherine of Aragon. It was Anne Boleyn when she arrived back in England in 1522, but mostly when there's the idea of a possible relationship between her and Henry VIII in 1527. We are, however, like 10 years, 11 years later, so here there's even less and less hope for Henry VIII to have a son with Catherine of Aragon, and there's more thoughts about changing wives, there are more thoughts about what can I do to secure the Tudor dynasty, and that unfortunately is going to impact tremendously Mary. But also it meant that she was going to be treated really badly. Everything is going to get worse for Mary and Catherine of Aragon. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that the relationship, the deterioration of the relationship between Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon is going to massively influence and impact Princess Mary, because she's going to choose her mother's side, who's completely disrespected and humiliated at court. Rise of Anne Boleyn at court means that there is so much humiliation for Catherine of Aragon, and there is this thing where Mary feels so powerless of seeing what's developing in front of her eyes. And obviously I want to remind you that though her father never changed religion, he remained a Catholic until the end of his life, to get what he wanted, to repudiate his first wife, to get an annulment, to marry Anne Boleyn, he changed the course of history. He decided to break with Rome. He decided to put himself as the head of the Church of England. And this was a huge affront on Princess Mary's religion, Catholicism. She's a very devout Catholic, and as such, she is not going to appreciate what's happening. So she's going to be attacked on a personal level, seeing her mother being badly treated, but she's attacked also on a religious level, where her identity, which is linked to Catholicism, is going to be attacked, is going to be disrespected. And with the fall of her mother, she's going to be asked to recognize Anne Boleyn as the new Queen of England. And even worse, she's going to be demoted from Princess to Lady Mary. The title declared illegitimate, the title taken away from her. And here we're talking about a woman who is now a teenager and who would never forget what's happening, who's completely hurt, who disagreed with her father, who's forbidden to see her mother, and who's badly treated. She's removed from court. She's taken away. She has lots of supporters. Eustace Chapuis, the imperial ambassador, really believes in her and really supported her. But the problem is, like, there was not much they could do. There were discussion at some point of, replacing Henry VIII with Mary because she was a good Catholic. But nothing really happened. No plan was really made for this to happen, because at the end of the day, she was still only a woman. On the 16th December 1533, so after the birth of Elizabeth I, after her mother is completely taken out of court, after the marriage between Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII, the coronation of Anne Boleyn in May 1533, Eustace Chapuis wrote that he's here to serve the princess at her own cost with a good and honourable train of servants, but all offers were not accepted, nor will there ever be. For were the said lady to remain by the prison, they would no longer be able to execute their bad design, which are evidently either to cause her to die of grief or in some other way, or else to compel her to renounce her rights, marry some low fellow, or let her fall a prey to lusts, so that they may have a pretext and excuse for disinheriting her, and submitting her to all manner of bad treatment. Anne Boleyn herself really accused Mary of being against her, and of being a big problem. She tried to convey that to Henry VIII and to make him understand that she was the one also causing so many problems by not recognizing what he was doing with the break with Rome, with the Church of England. And she was using that politically. You know, when sometimes I say understand someone's motives is not justifying them. The truth is, Anne Boleyn didn't treat Princess Mary right at all. We can understand why, because Mary represented a threat for her and for her daughter Elizabeth. Mary still had lots of support that Anne Boleyn didn't have. Mary I was still the first child of Henry VIII. So, you know, there was a lot of why you can understand Anne Boleyn's reaction to Mary, but it doesn't justify it. At the end of the day, she did play a role in the bad treatment of Princess Mary. And while sometimes she tried to reconcile with her and Mary always refused, we can understand why Mary refused. Anne Boleyn represented the reason why she lost everything. Anne Boleyn and the break with Rome represented everything she had lost, her status. She never saw her mother again, she was prevented of seeing her. And I told you the bond they had, so it must have been tremendously painful and hurtful for Mary. And she could never forgive Anne for that. Even Emperor Charles V wrote to Empress Isabella in 1536 about the Princess Mary. Of the princess, my cousin, I hear only that she is inconsolable at the loss she has sustained. She just had lost her mother, Catherine of Aragon, January 1536. Especially when she thinks of her father's past behaviour towards herself and of the little favour she can expect for the future. I trust, however, that God will have pity on her and will not permit the great injustice which has been to her to remain without some reparation. This idea that Mary suffered a great deal at her father's hands didn't go unnoticed by so many Europeans, you know, rulers or diplomats. And even the French, Chabot, French ambassador, really tried to get Mary back into favour at Henry's court, and which really displeased, obviously, Anne Boleyn and created this friction between Anne Boleyn and the French. And I discussed that more in my forthcoming book, Thorns, Lust and Glory, The Betrayal of Anne Boleyn, where I discussed the relationship between Anne Boleyn and the French. But the truth is, all of this is going to deeply influence Mary. And at this time, there's no hope for her to ever rule. And everything's going to change for her. Lots of things are going to change for her. And that is why I believe that to understand Mary I of England, we have to understand Princess Mary. I really hope that you enjoyed this Once Upon a Woman video. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments down below if you have any questions. And thank you so much forever for your support. Bye.